always be intentional. I think you shouldn't ever edit something just because, and you shouldn't leave the mistakes in just because. You need to know why. This is the Self-Recording Band Podcast, the show where we help you make exciting records on your own, wherever you are, DIY style. Let's go. Hello and welcome to the Self-Recording Band Podcast. I am your host, Benedict Hein, and I'm here, as always, with my friend and co-host, Malcolm Owen Flood. How are you, Malcolm?
Hello, I'm great, Benny. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. Last week,
Awesome.
You asked me how I was. I told a little bit about what was going on. Now, this week, I want to know, what did you do on the weekend? How are you? How have you been?
I've been good. Yeah, what did I do on the weekend? I just hung out with my fiance quite a bit because that's all you really can do. Yeah, did a Costco shopping trip. It was, invigorating stuff, right?
Yeah.
Just sounding like an old man, but it was actually awesome. It was very relaxing. I didn't work. I resisted the urge to go into the studio, and I went into the studio one time, almost about to work. And then I said no, and I grabbed a video game controller and played video games instead, which sounds counterproductive, but it was the best thing I could have done. Needed to. I've just been really grinding and enjoying it, but for people that haven't mixed too often, if you mix for too long and too much, you hit a wall, and then you have to take a real break. So it's more productive to force yourself to take breaks along the way.
Oh yeah. Totally. You have to. And it's sometimes you are way beyond the point where you should have actually taken that break and you don't even notice. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's hard to notice when that happens. I think, I'm not really sure. Sometimes I have great mixing sessions that go on for hours and days sometimes, and sometimes I'm not really able to make great decisions anymore after 2 or 3 hours. So yeah. I don't know. There seems to be a number of factors that play into that. But typically, I think most people agree that without a break, more than 3 or 4 hours is almost not doable. And then with a break, after a full day of 8 or 10 hours, it's definitely over. And
yes,
if you've done that for a week or so, you definitely need to have a longer break. It's
not just your ears, it's a lot of mental stuff too. You gotta keep creativity there and just perspective and energy. And then your ears are another thing entirely though, because they do play tricks on you.
Oh yeah, they do.
I'll be vulnerable and honest here. I had a few weeks back one of the worst mixes I've ever done in my life. I sent out.
Oh shit.
Yeah, and it was a band I'm very comfortable with.
Okay.
Very comfortable with. I've worked with them a ton, and so they know what my work should be. And and I was like, oh yeah, that sounds cool. Just for some reason, I'm monitoring twice as loud as I normally do, and I'm just grinding it out at the end of a long day. And I'm like, yeah, this sounds super banging. I'm in. Send it off, and then it was an immediate whoa, something's wrong here. And then I was sure that it sounded awesome, but then I did gave myself some time away from it, came back, and I was oh, thank God it's my friends that I mixed this one for. Wow. And I know I wouldn't have sent it to them if it wasn't. I almost always do. I finish it one day and then don't send it till the next day kind of move.
Yep. Totally.
Which is very wise, by the way.
Yeah.
But this time I didn't, and oh my God, it was bad.
Yeah.
It was so bad. But then it ended up awesome.
Okay, that's the good story.
The remix was okay, I know where I went wrong. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. A pro tip here, as Malcolm said, always, absolutely always, if the deadline allows, just let it sit there. Go back to it the next day and then confirm that it's good and then send it. That's something I struggle sometimes with because I'm so stoked on what I do usually that I just want to get it out and get the feedback, and I just want them to have fun with it and listen to it. Yeah. So the second that I consider it finished, I just want to send it out. But I always need to convince myself to not do that, even if I think it's really rad. Just wait and the next day go back to it. And almost always I find something that's really worth tweaking.
Yeah. Sometimes it's not even worth, because you're oh, I just got to go in there and micro adjust the snare 0.02 dBs.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, why did I do that? That's not necessary. but like that's normally it. It's like this minor little tweaks, but you're for the most part, it's like, okay, yeah, this is good, awesome.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, it's like, really glad I gave that a day to simmer. Like I was in like the middle of like a string of home runs of like the send off the mix, no revision requests, off we go. I'm like, I was on fire, and then this one mix was just garbage. I don't know what happened, and it's just what we're talking about. It's just my ears were probably fried. It was the end of the weekend. Yeah. So just
that can happen. That can happen.
It can happen.
Yeah.
Nobody bats 100.
No, nope. I have a similar story. I had a similar story 2 weeks ago. It was not because of ear fatigue, but I made another like very common mistake. And like if you are sharing such a story, I want to share one as well. I ruined the mix as well, but not because of fatigue, but because last minute, like just before I finished the mix, I decided to reference a couple of tracks, and I was happy with the mix as it was, and I should have just left it leave it that way. But I decided, like, one of the references that the band gave me, or some of the references they gave me, were CLA mixes, like really radio rock, big sort of mixes, and that's not my typical vibe that I'm going for. Like I like it a little more raw and organic, and like, I don't know, not so scooped. I like to have a fuller mid-range most of the time. But then I listened to those CLA mixes and decided that I was going totally in the wrong direction. So I tweaked my mix to match those CLA mixes more, and that completely ruined everything. I should have just left it as it was. I tried to mimic something that was just not right for the songs, and I should have went with my gut feelings, but I decided to go after the CLA mixes, and I sent it to the band, and we both decided that this was not good at all, and not the right thing to do with these songs. Right. So we changed it, and what we ended up with was pretty much my first version of the mix. So yeah, that can happen as well. Yeah,
that is part of been there is all I can say to that. It's like you pull in the reference mix, and then it's like it just like flips what you thought was awesome. All of a sudden, like you're like, oh well, this is so different. It must be wrong.
Yes,
but that's not necessarily the case. It might be so different, and that's right. So learning to choose good, like accurate references is almost a skill that you have to develop. I feel like what is a good reference for one band might not be for another song or another band. I've got like a whole catalog of references, and I'm pretty careful about what I drag in to the session, because it can like really mess with you.
Yeah. And sometimes, like in this case, the band gives you a reference, but even those references might not be right for the project. They just don't know.
Wait, a band's vision of what their song should be was wrong? No way. Oh my God. That's never happened in my life.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, so, yeah, but that's... and they agreed with everything that I said, so they didn't want the CLA mix in the end, but they thought that they wanted one. So
no, they liked the songs. That's what they liked.
Yes.
That's almost every reference I get is they liked the song. Yep. And occasionally there's something they're like, but you know what the factor is? You can tell when they are sending a proper reference, because they're like, I like this about it. Like they talk about it, not just this song's great.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, the drum sound is very on par with what we're doing, kind of thing, and like stuff like that. And you're like, okay, I can take this seriously.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, absolutely. That's actually something you could tell bands, or you can communicate within your band, that if someone wants to use something as a reference, have a reason for it, and try to describe why you want to do it. And that's absolutely good. Okay, well, we should get to today's episode, which is sort of a part 2 of what we were talking about last week. So it's all about the performances. It's all about the songs and how they are being played. And last week we were talking about what is actually tight enough, how tight is tight enough, because people seem to struggle with that. And we figured that it is it's a combination of performance and also editing, So if you want to get something really tight, you need to play it well. You need to decide, first of all, what is actually tight enough. Then you need to learn how to play it. You need to analyze your recordings of what you do, and you need to try to get it as good as possible. But then there's another step, and that is called editing, and that happens after the performance has been recorded. And it's almost always necessary. Contrary to popular belief, editing is almost always necessary and helpful for your music. It doesn't hurt your music by default. So that's what we're trying to talk and explain, talk about and explain to you today in this episode. So why do your tracks need editing? What's the number one reason in your opinion, Malcolm?
There is a misconception that editing removes feel from music. And I would argue quite the opposite. I would argue that usually when we're editing, we're actually trying to correct feel or reinforce feel and make sure that the feel is what is getting across and not technical deficiencies. So the first reason I'm doing that is to reinforce the kind of core aspects of the song, which in the modern recording environment is almost always starting with rhythmic stuff. So we're kind of creating a groove, I guess, first and foremost.
Yeah, I agree. And to me, the biggest reason for why your tracks need editing is that I think the level of quality or the level of not perfection, that's what people like will take and use against us. But not perfection, but the way modern recordings sound and the way the way modern recordings sound and what we like about most records, and not only modern recordings but great recordings in general, because editing was a thing in the past as well. Many people are not aware of that, but it's always been a thing, basically. The way professional records sound, let's put it that way, is usually not only achieved through playing. And if you compare your best raw takes, like the best possible thing you can do, the best you can pull off, and you take that and compare it to your favorite records, you will probably still notice quite a big difference in the quality of the performance. Mm-hmm. And one reason for that is that you're probably comparing yourself to like outstanding unicorn musicians, but the other reason for this is called editing. So the biggest reason for why your tracks need editing is if you want to compete with your favorite records, if you want to have a professional sounding record that doesn't distract the listener, that like lets the listener focus on the song, on the music, on the lyrics, on the melodies without getting distracted, that evokes the emotions that it's supposed to, then you will probably need some editing. It's just part of it. It's not possible to do it without it, with the exception of a very few genres that are very loose by definition. But
yeah, there's this reminded me. One of my favorite guitarists is John Mayer, who is pretty polarizing as far as music fans go. A lot of people love him, a lot of people don't. But he's definitely a fantastic guitarist. But I grabbed one of his albums a while back, and in the credits, he actually gave a shout out to the editing engineer on his album. And it was like a custom little, like, it said something like special thanks to so and so who personally touched every note on this album. And it's like referring to somebody going through literally every little transient on every track, you know. And it's like John Mayer stuff is very high quality productions, but have a ton of feel.
Yeah.
So what's going on there, right?
Yeah.
Like somebody going through every detail on those albums, and they're huge budgeted albums, you know. These very, very massive. Especially like he came up in like the golden era of big budget stuff as well. Or just after anyways. But you know, millions of dollars being spent on this stuff.
Yeah.
And somebody's going through every detail, but he's got like some super groovy rhythm tracks going down. And somebody's editing everything. It still feels vibey. And he's using the best musicians in the world. Like he's literally using Steve Jordan, who is as legendary as they come as far as drummers go. And things are still getting edited. So what really Benny and I are talking about is that a lot of bands get started in this and want to start recording and think that they don't need to. And it's like, okay, why could an inexperienced band not need it, but the best musicians in the world are embracing it?
Yes.
There's a kind of a weird divide there. And it kind of, like we talked about click tracks. There used to be the thing of like, don't use click tracks, but it's like, but all your favorite bands do. So
yeah. Exactly.
So it's kind of the same thing. And editing has that kind of thing to it as well, where people think it's cheating or something like that. But I just don't agree.
Nope. And you just said it, basically. They are not the best musicians in the world. They not only are okay with it, they embrace it because they know it makes their performances even better. They know that by the end, every single note will be there intentionally. Every note will be exactly where it's supposed to be to create the perfect like emotional reaction and like when people listen to the music. And they embrace it because all they want is to make the perfect record, and not in a technically perfect sense. Like perfect record doesn't mean that every microsecond is like, everything's on the grid to the microsecond. It's not that. It's perfect for the song, for the sound, for the music, for the emotion, the content of the songs. So all they want to do is make that perfect record and make sure that it turns out the way they wanted it to. So that's why they embrace it. And I think that many people know what editing is, but I think they either don't understand it completely and so they are afraid of it, or they doubt that it's really necessary because they believe that those big records have not been edited.
Right.
Or they even believe that it hurts the music, as you said. But all of that, I think, comes from a lack of knowledge and understanding. And I think most people would be surprised when they saw what went into their favorite records. John Mayer is a perfect example for that, because I bet when they went through this record and edited it, they were not looking at the grid and like they were not putting the acoustic guitar on every like bar or every beat, but they were listening to the music and they made sure that when it's supposed to be early, it was early, or when it's supposed to be late, it was late, and by the exact right amount, and that's an art in and of itself. Yeah.
Like another little perspective is that they could have recorded that album without any editing and it would still sound tighter than your band. Like that's the level they're at. But they are still trying to get further. So I feel like for bands that aren't super experienced with studio proficiency, not editing is like you are really doing yourself an extra disservice because you're competing against bands that are on another level that are also using these tools. Just kind of a weird way to think about it.
That's so true.
And I think, like you said, it's not about always just putting it to the grid. I think a lot of editing and being a good editor and being a good producer is choosing what not to touch. So that fellow went through every little transient on the John Mayer album, but he didn't touch everyone. Like he just looked at everyone, Some stuff didn't need to be moved, I'm sure. Probably a lot of stuff in their case. But it was considered. And I consider that part of editing.
Yes. 100% agreed. So, we are on our way of to debunk that theory, demystify editing. And we're trying to explain to you again why this is such a crucial step. And I don't know, have we talked about this before? Like we are 44 episodes in, we didn't have a dedicated editing episode. I think every once in a while it came up, but we didn't really dedicate a whole episode or a huge part of it to this topic. But it's just, I feel like it is really, really important. And the thing is, every time I mention this topic, be it in a conversation or in a post online or in a Facebook group or whatever, immediately a discussion starts because I don't know. It's just some people immediately jump on the conversation and tell me or tell others that editing is the devil. Others jump in and like defend editing, but it seems to be a topic that's polarizing and sort of important to people, but most of them don't really know what they're talking about oftentimes. So I really think it's important to talk about it and to clarify what it can do, what it can't do, and why most songs just need it.
Yes. Is it the Hippocratic Oath? It's the, like, doctors have to, like, swear to do no harm.
Yeah.
Above all, do no harm. That is a very good rule of thumb with editing.
Yeah.
Hopefully you're not doing any harm. And, actually, that's, like, only somewhat true. Sometimes you do have to make things sound, like, in an extreme situation, I will be okay with, like, an artifact from something being stretched if it is worth the benefit of, like, the timing being corrected or whatever. But for the most part, do no harm is the goal here for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And we need to make clear once again that editing is not about removing the feel or anything organic about your music or like sucking the life out of the music. That's not what it's about. It's the opposite is true. It's about removing what is distracting, what doesn't serve the song, about doing no harm, as Malcolm said. And it's about leaving that stuff in and even putting more focus on the stuff that's really contributing to the emotion and the impact of the song. And that, like, it's the opposite of what many people think it is. So you want to remove what's distracting and what doesn't serve the music. So actual mistakes, then things like noise, of course, and stuff that just doesn't belong there is also part of editing, just cleaning everything up, But then removing obvious mistakes, that's the most basic level of editing, I think. But then it goes further and it goes into when you want to improve the performance. And that's what Malcolm was talking about, what you were talking about when you said even the best musicians in the world benefit from that. Beyond just removing mistakes, which probably doesn't happen as often with those kinds of musicians, there's still editing to do because we want to take their almost flawless performances and make them really flawless. No.
Yes, exactly. You know what is just occurring to me? That there's, again, weirdly, some people are, like, strongly against editing for whatever reason, but nobody's against, like, compression or limiting, and like using compression on, like, a drum kit is just as much as editing as editing is. Like, we're totally changing the dynamics of how they played. And very intentionally.
Yeah.
So it's like it's the same thing. We're editing is mixing in a way.
Yeah.
Because how a kick drum sounds when the bass is early on it or synced up to it is totally different.
Yes, absolutely. That's actually a great way to look at it. Like, we're completely okay with pretending that a drummer hit harder than he actually did. But we're not okay with pretending he was earlier or later.
Yeah.
But like it's completely the same thing. We're just manipulating the performance to serve the song and to make it better. So, yeah. And what's also interesting is what you said about the bass and the kick. That's actually one of the points here on our outline is that you can actually change or improve the sound of the recording of the song. Not only the performance, not only how the performance feels, but it will sound better and different if it is edited or performed properly.
Absolutely.
Because things add up. If on the first beat of a part, the kick, the bass, and the rhythm guitar are perfectly together, the part will hit completely different and sound completely different than if it's like a sloppy beginning of that part.
Yeah, I really like that. It's just editing is mixing. It's like pre-mix.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's no wonder that, like, really loose recordings are harder to mix, right?
Yes. I would even go as far as to say that some people would be better off, if they had to choose, they would be better off choosing editing instead of mixing than the other way around. Because I think if you edit properly, if you really do an awesome job editing a performance, let's say you have an okay performance and you really do an amazing job editing it, and then you just do a rough fader balance and panning and no real mixing, that will probably sound better than the unedited performance, like made sound like that's been made that's been mixed or made sound good. Like I think the edited great performance with a fader volume balance will sound better.
It definitely could. I think in some situations that could be totally true.
Yeah.
I've definitely had some situations where I've had to mix something and it is a mess, and I have to like figure out what is the strongest thing in the like strongest performance. And actually that's a weird thing. It's like, okay, to salvage this, I have to draw attention to whatever is like the least crappy.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the drums. I can make the drums sound awesome because the player was okay there, but everything else, the guitars are really badly out of tune. So I got to like draw attention away from them. And that is such a compromise. Think about how much better that end product would have been if the guitars had been in tune. I wouldn't have had to try and hide them. So yeah, like that kind of goes back to both just editing affecting the mix, but also the emotional impact of the song now as well. Because do you think about songs as like sustain based versus rhythmic based? I know like that's something I picked up from Joel Wanasek, a mixer we're both familiar with.
Yeah.
And he kind of like labels things in ways like that, like going with a more transient heavy mix, which is more like, drum centric, or a more sustained one where you're using more like keys or guitars and stuff like that. It's kind of an interesting way to look at both productions like and mixes. Off topic, but
yeah. In a way, I do. That definitely informs some of the decisions that I make. So
yeah, it's not my usual kind of perception method, but it is a fun way to look at it every once in a while.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, in a way, I do. Like totally off topic, but the way I shape the low end, for example, depends on that a lot, I think. And yeah, it's definitely interesting. Yeah, I mean, so you can definitely improve the performance. You can remove what's distracting. You can remove mistakes. Also, that's also an interesting thing, I think, is even if you have perfect individual performances, let's say you have super good musicians and everyone did their part. Like if you listen to the parts in solo, they'd just be perfect performances and touching and like the vibe is there and the emotion is there and everything. But that doesn't mean that together they create the perfect version of the song. Maybe they still need editing because the individual amazing performances need some help to so they will work together well. Yeah. That could just be the case. So
that is so important to understand. The not editing thing works a lot better if things are played together. If they're overdubbed, it's a freaking disaster, in my opinion. There is a difference in how people gel together when it's overdubbed versus played together live. And I've definitely actually I just had a band and the poor bassist had a great take on the second take, but the drummer's take came like 3 or 4 after, and we were getting bets live. So he's like, "Well, I got it on the second one," and I'm like, "I don't care about that take, man. Like to be honest, like I'm drums first here, and you're gonna whatever gelled to that is gonna be my priority. And if we need to overdub to those drums, it'll be what it is, kind of thing. Because like his perfect take is not to those drums. It's like it won't work together at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like this connection thing is important to consider. And most recordings these days are, of course, overdubbed. So you're losing that. So we're using like a reference, like a click, and playing to the previously recorded instruments, so maybe drums, but it's still just different, and it needs the helping hand of us manually going in and just making sure it's all how we intend.
Yeah, totally. So what would you say to the people who by now will still say, well, but my favorite records definitely have mistakes in them and they're definitely not perfect and they don't sound edited, and all the modern recordings, I don't like them because they sound too perfect, so I'm against editing?
So down at the bottom here on our outline, I wrote editing as a time saver. And that's pretty important, actually, because what your favorite band might have done is maybe really good, but does have some mistakes, and maybe they didn't edit it. I'm going to say they probably actually did have some editing, but maybe you're right. Maybe they didn't, but they probably had a lot of time to play that in the studio. And time is something that most bands don't have a lot of. If you're in a rental studio, like a commercial studio, you have very little time, I'm sure, because it's very expensive. So editing can be the difference between like a pretty much a throwaway take and a keeper take. If you're under like a time crunch kind of thing, you can really salvage some stuff with that. So I think it's important. Just like if you want results that are even up to like that level, in a short amount of time and your ability is not there, editing is really going to be the clutch that makes that possible for you. But okay, that didn't really answer your question. I'm realizing as I said that.
In a way it did. In a way it did. That's part of the answer, definitely.
But then, to the imperfections, like being okay. I mean, it's something we've said before. It's like it's despite them, not because of them, right?
Yeah.
It's like there's always going to be examples of that, but that's not why the song was successful. It's an amazing song, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think that these famous records that we all like, that we all love, that might have or definitely have some small mistakes or imperfections in them. First of all, despite them, not because of them, because they didn't have the tools we have today. Now you might say, okay, but that's what makes those recordings special. And if they would have, if they had the tools, they would have ruined it. I don't think they would have. But other than that, I think those musicians, especially back then, when it was so hard to become like a professional musician, when there were gatekeepers, when not everybody was able to go to the studio and record a record with a budget, those people were almost always like really exceptional artists and musicians. So comparing ourselves to those musicians and assuming we can do the same, and if we leave our mistakes in, it will be the same magic will happen that happened back then. It's just dangerous because it's not likely that it will. We are not those are like really unicorn, outstanding musicians, and those were also moments in time like that were just captured, and that were. It's not that every band that enters the studio is able to capture that moment. It was the right time for that song with the right people in the right room. They've probably been in that studio for months or years working on that record, and suddenly it clicked, and this happened in this second, and they captured it. It's not something you can just reproduce by like setting up a bunch of microphones and interface in your practice room and doing it for 2 weeks. That's not the same thing. So you can't assume that this will happen. And I also think that most mistakes that end up on our records today are not intentional, they are not magical, they are just the result of us not being able to do any better. And so there's no reason to keep them. There's really no reason. Why would they help the songs? There's nothing magical about them. So I think you should always, and that's what it comes down to, if you want to have mistakes in your songs and imperfections because you think it helps the music, you should question every single one of those mistakes and look for a really good reason to keep it. And if there's no good reason, if it's just because you think mistakes are good, then you should probably remove it. You better have a really good reason to leave those in. Sometimes they could help. Sometimes it is cool. Sometimes being a little late or early or whatever, or having a little I don't know, sometimes noisy things or whatever can be really cool, can add vibe and character to a record, but you better have a reason for keeping it in.
You'll know as well.
I think so, yeah.
When lightning strikes, it's like, for sure. Like I've got a dog barks in the back of like a vocal take on a song I did, and I was like, oh, that was so perfect. Like how it's timed, everything. Like listen to that. You can it's just snuck in there, and band's like, yes, absolutely, that's so cool. Yeah. But if it had been like on top of the word like that they're singing and like distracting, then probably not, right? Like it happened, and we knew instantly it was awesome. But most of the time, if my dog's barking, I'm like, all right, stop the take. I can't have dogs barking in every album.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, the same is true for the other way around. If you decide to edit something, you better have a good reason for it as well. So, natural feel that actually fits the song is something completely different than a mistake, and this should be removed. Of course, this shouldn't. Absolutely not. So it's the same. You need to think about it in the exact same way. So if you have a performance that's obviously great, and you decide to edit it just because you heard that you should edit your music, that's not what we're trying to say here. You should have a reason for it. You should, if you think it will be better after it's edited because you want it really tight, then do it. But if you think and you need to have the experience to really be able to tell that's the hard part. But if it's not better if the song is perfect as it is, the performance is perfect as it is. You might ruin it by editing. That can totally be the case. So when in doubt, just try it. Maybe make a copy, edit the drums to the grid, or edit the bass and the guitars to the drums, make it perfect, compare the two versions, and you will immediately know what feels better. Show it to others if you're still struggling, but like do some experimenting, do some tests, and then use whatever is better. But in both cases, always be intentional. I think you shouldn't ever edit something just because, and you shouldn't leave the mistakes in just because. You need to know why.
Yeah, you'll find that as you develop your skills as an editor, which is part of the tool bag of a DIY recording band, because editing isn't. We just said that editing is mixing, but it is not the mixer's job.
Yeah.
It is. It's like along the way process, right? That has to happen. So it's got to be whoever's like. It's just got to happen. But generally, if you're a self-producing, self-recording band, which you obviously are, if you're listening to this, you got to develop these skills on your own, or be willing to hire somebody to do it.
Yeah.
But in general, it's pretty wise to develop these skills, I think. Very good tool set to have at your disposal. Anyways, I lost my train of thought entirely while talking about that. I was talking about something. Oh well. Sorry, guys. 2 cups of coffee wasn't enough. Here we go.
Editing is part of the tool bag of a DIY engineer. That's what you said.
Oh, yeah. You're trying to remind me, trying to get me going again.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's back. As you develop these skills, it'll become the different types of tightness will become different tools that you can use based on the situation you're in. Like you'll know what those guitars could sound like if you went really crazy with like the doubles and made them really sync up, versus what they are with the player's ability just doing it naturally, kind of thing. You'll know what it would be like if you just kind of slightly aligned them. They kind of becomes like a color palette that you can use, and that might be like something you're making a decision on, like with each step of the song. Like so, you might have super tight drums but leave guitars loose, or you might have the opposite. And it's like, it's a very conscious and active decision making going on. It's not just this is my move, go kind of thing. It's like it's a taste decision, but until you've done it, it's really hard to know what that will be like. So you have to develop the skills and try it out and go to these different extremes to kind of find out what's possible and learn what that sounds like.
Yeah.
I remember, until I've talked about this before, but when my band did an album with Eric Ratz, a big shop producer over here in Canada, and until I'd done guitars with those guys, I had no idea that guitars could sound that good.
Yeah.
It was like I was not even in the ballpark of what I thought was tight. Was so far off what tight can be, and for like that big modern rock kind of sounding guitar tone, I learned how to get there through that process, and what I like, how vigilant I need to be to pull that off.
Yes, absolutely.
It's a lot more vigilant than you think.
Oh yeah, it is. It is. It absolutely is. And I think, same for me. Like nobody has an idea of what professional editing actually looks like until you like see it, and it was a big aha moment for me as well. Yeah, and it took quite a while actually. Even when I thought I knew what editing was, I was still blown away by the amount of detail that like professionals put into that. And even today, I'm not doing much editing anymore because like I have Thomas who does a lot of editing for me, and I've outsourced editing to other people. But I know how to do it, and I've edited a bunch myself. But every time I get edited tracks back from someone who's taking it really seriously, I'm still kind of blown away by it. I'm still kind of learning. I don't know. It's like there are some people who do nothing but editing every day, day in, day out. They're real editing specialists, and the speed, the confidence in their decisions, their ability to judge if something needs some correction or not is actually pretty fascinating. That's a really mind-blowing skill to have, and it can totally, it's an integral part of making a record. It's like super valuable to have those people and to have these skills. And if you are a DIY engineer or band recording themselves, as Malcolm said, absolutely a skill you want to develop. you don't need to become the best at it, but I think you should at least know some basic editing, just so you know what it is all about, just so that you can talk about it with your engineer, your mixing engineer, whatever. And it's just a very valuable skill to have. Also, it kind of tells you, and that goes back to the last episode. It kind of tells you when something is tight enough or not, because once you know what can or can't be done in editing and how tight something should be after editing, you can make a decision about whether or not your take that you just recorded, your performance, was actually good enough.
Absolutely. Yeah. That segues here. Most of what we've been kind of referring to, I think anyways, a lot of it's been referring to like timing editing, where we're like, nudging clips around the timeline to sync stuff up. But there's kind of like I can kind of think of like 4 spots. There's like timing, which of course, but there's also pitch, right? So tuning stuff, usually vocals, but you can tune all sorts of stuff, bass guitars. I mean, there's even like polyphonic tuners that can tune like individual notes and chords. I've never had to do that, but it's appealing. And then there's like noise repair stuff, which is actually super important, and like that happens more often than you'd think. But like click bleed getting through in something, and needing to like be able to pull out the sound of a metronome bleeding into something, or like weird clicks and pops that pop up in recording. Getting rid of like clipping distortion sometimes, like there's noise repair editing. And then there's, of course, like we said, there's kind of like mixing editing where you're editing for sonic decisions. Like, for example, I just did a pretty like modern rock new metal song, and I chopped the end of like the notes for these like dun 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 dun, and it's like very staccato, like inhumanly staccato on every instrument. Like literally just deleted all the audio from the timeline in those little shots, and that was a sonic decision, not a performance decision, really. Yeah. Right? I needed like there literally to be a lack of noise there.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, what you should develop skills in really pitch and time. If for the DIY recordist who's trying to kind of just learn the bare minimum of skills that are going to really help you get by in making your record, I think timing editing and pitch editing are the 2 I would focus on. Noise repair is like you kind of got to get specialty software and stuff like that. So probably don't do that. Just make sure that you don't have bad noises in your recordings. That's better. Yeah. And then the mixing thing, that's mixing things. But and there's also kind of production. But yeah, 2 developable skills is first off timing, and then and pitch. Some DAWs do have pitch software, some don't. So I guess that could be tricky if you have to buy something. But like that, I don't think anybody can become a truly good vocal recordist, like recording engineer, until they've tuned some vocals.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's also, and now people will say, what, tuning vocals? You can't do that. Like it's, there is an episode of our podcast. It's episode 17. It's called Vocal Tuning Isn't Just for T-Pain. And just listen to that episode, because vocal tuning, same as with editing in general, is not supposed to ruin your recordings, but it can really help you get your recordings to sound like they should. And once you've played around with tuning vocals, editing vocals, I think only then you'll know what a great vocal recording actually sounds like. This will help you record so much better takes. It will help you become a better singer, actually. Mm-hmm. And I totally agree with you here, Malcolm, that you need to at least try and manipulate some vocals and correct the pitch if you want to like find out what is actually tight and what is actually a good performance and good intonation.
There's also another benefit that you kind of just alluded to in learning to edit. It's that, it forces you to look your takes in the eye and assess how well you're actually doing. So that can be pretty disheartening sometimes. Like, oh man, I'm really having to work hard to get this to sound tight with my editing. That means that obviously you could work harder on the performance side of things as well. And like same with like pitch and all that for singing. But it also like encourages you, like it's inspiring to try and get things better, because editing for most people isn't considered fun. it's like a time-consuming, tedious task, So it's going to push you to like figure out ways to track smarter and more efficiently and get better performances, and to just like practice, I guess, as well. And it can be really illuminating. Like I've had drummers that have like kind of come to see what I'm doing to their drum track and be like, I'm really ahead, aren't I? I'm like, yeah, you play a little ahead, and they work on that. Then you can finally visually see what your bad habits are, and that's pretty useful.
So much. Absolutely. So I think we need to, the last thing we need to do is we need to make clear that editing, and we kind of failed to do that in the beginning, that editing is not part of mixing. It's an own like step of the process. Its own step of the process. And it's partly correction, like removal of mistakes, and partly enhancing the performance. And it's like, it's got nothing, like it does something to the sonics and to the audio quality, to the way things sound, but it's not like using EQ and compression. That's all mixing stuff. It's manipulating the recording and preparing it so that it can be mixed properly. So it's the step between recording and mixing, if you want. And so we need to clarify that. And what's happening there? Oh, my... I didn't expect that. And you can't see that if you're listening to the podcast, but my little boy just came into my office here.
Hi. I guess he can't hear me. Right?
No, he can't hear you, but he can see you, and he looks kind of fascinated by the screen here.
He's the guy that looks like he just woke up.
Yeah, kind of. And he kind of probably thinks it's disturbing that I'm talking in a language he doesn't understand.
Right.
But yeah, we were about to wrap it up anyway. So it's its own step between recording and mixing. And I just want to clarify that, because I don't know about you, but I've had the request a couple of times from people that sent me stuff to mix, and then they are actually wanting me to edit stuff, and they don't realize that it is not mixing, because it is not, it is something different.
Yeah, I'm totally... That's too funny. You keep right on. Yeah, the same's happened to me, of course, as well. I think it's happened to everybody in the biz. It's just a misconception, and it's just a different mindset. You actually don't want your mixer to be doing the editing right before they mix, because it takes them out of the emotional side of their brain, which is where you want to be mixing from more so. So I even if I do end up doing editing and mixing on a song, I try to put like a serious gap of time between those two tasks. It's not uncommon. Like if there's like, I'm cutting a single with a band, we go and record it, and like I edit as I go. So by the time we're finished recording, we're edited for the most part. But then like a week between that date and me starting to consider mixing is pretty standard for me.
Yeah.
I want to like pretty much I want to forget that I worked on the song by the time I get it to mix.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Same here. And what I like the most is just outsourcing editing and prepping completely, so that I don't have to deal with that and just worry about the creative decisions. That's what I like most. Yeah, it's just a separate step. But just know that if you are making a record, the editing needs to be done by someone. So you can either do it yourself, or you can hire someone, or you can ask your mixer if he or she can include it in the project rate or whatever, but it needs to be done. You can't just skip it. And even if you don't think your song needs editing, it probably does. And even if it's just subtle editing, some moves, you just can't skip this step. So just consider this, think about it, have some budget for it or the time to do it yourself, but just know that it needs to be done. And this is just so important to say, because not every band knows that this is the case. So definitely. Yeah.
Also, you have to, like, when you send it to a mixer, they're assuming that you've delivered what they want mixed, that the decisions have been made. Like we're trusting that these, like, it was how you intended. So you can't really expect them to call it out either, because that's the producer's job, and that's their role. I do occasionally say, like, hey, this is pretty, like this would be a lot better, but in general, that's not really the mixer's duty, right? The mixer's there to mix the decisions that were made by the producer.
Yeah. I will totally call them out. just because, no, not in every case. If I know that there has been a producer and a studio and whatnot involved, I definitely know my place, and I assume they know what they're doing. But if it's a DIY band and I feel like the song could be much better, I just say it. Even if I risk, like, I've never had like really bad experience doing that, but it's, of course, like, you're basically telling the band that their recordings are not good enough. But I'm just fine doing that. If I think my job is to give them the best thing I can possibly give them, and if that involves telling them or asking them if they could fix a thing or two, then I'm happy to do that. So a good mixer, I think, will or should have at least a conversation about this with you. So
you can always check, right? You can always be like, is this how you want it?
Yeah.
Because I would like it to be another way. And it's always like I've done the same thing. I've actually had just told bands to redo it. And then like, it doesn't happen. So it's like, okay, well, that gig is lost because of that. But did I really want to spend time trying to mix this hot mess? No. Right? Like, it's not worth it.
No. I even go that as far as, like, I have this conversation before I even listen to the music. Not that I'm telling them it's not good enough before I have listened, but that would be.
I could tell from your band name that you suck.
No, but sometimes I think I can.
Hilarious.
No, but what I'll do is I'll ask them questions when we start talking about working together, and one of those questions is: are your tracks edited? Do you still need help with editing? Are you happy with your performances? Is there something you're not happy with but just don't know how to fix? Stuff like that. So I figure out before we even start, how they like their performances, if they think it needs some work, if they consider it edited. And so that's, I think, the way to go. And and then when they tell me it's edited and I listen to it and it's clearly not or not enough, then I'll just let them know and we'll go from there. And I even go as far as, like, if I don't think it will be a product in the end that I could be proud to have my name on, and like that I'm proud to share with the world, then chances are I'm not going to do it, actually. So I don't know. Like, in the beginning, I think you say yes to everything, but at some point I realized that I only want to do something that actually helps bands and helps people. And I think paying a lot of money for a mix, knowing that, or they don't know, but like taking a lot of money for a mix, in my case, knowing that what I will give them back will not help them reach any of their goals because it will not sound professional or the way they want it to sound, doesn't help them, doesn't help me if people know that I did this sort of work. So that's how important editing is. If you're not willing to do it, I might not even want to mix it.
Because people won't want to listen to it. So.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Did we drive that point home?
I think so.
Great. We should mention that if you are looking to find somebody to edit your music, like, you don't want to learn to do it yourself, or just like, some people, you're not going to be good at everything. I, for example, am pretty slow at vocal tuning, if I'm honest. I think I'm good at it, but I kind of get caught up in the details too much. So I usually outsource it. I just got Melodyne, so I've been doing it myself lately because it's kind of fun. but like before, I usually outsource it. And it like, it's just, because I needed to get done quicker. And maybe you don't have an ear for pitch, but you do have an ear for timing, so you need to outsource that. But anyways, what I'm saying is, try it all. Try and learn it. If you can't, don't feel bad about it. Just outsource it and get the job done. But if you need to find somebody, just reach out to Benny or I. We know a lot of editors. And we can, I don't know if Thomas is available even, but he's our podcast dude and Benny's guy. And I've got people I use for all sorts of jobs as well. So reach out and we can set you up with somebody.
Absolutely. Absolutely, we can. Cool. That's it for today's episode. Again, check out episode number 17, theselfrecordingband.com/17. It's about vocal tuning specifically. So if you want to learn more about vocal tuning, listen to that. It's a deep dive into that special part of editing. And other than that, just experiment, try and see and can compare and be honest, get feedback, everything we've been talking about, and your music will definitely turn out better. Your recordings will definitely turn out better.
All right. Take care.
Take care. Thank you for listening. Bye.